due to the animal welfare concerns. But why do farmers find this system more attractive? We're going to give you much more on that story at a later time. Let's now bring in my colleague, Dr. Paul Kang'ethe, who is a veterinary who found his way to the newsroom. We now want to talk about animal welfare at large. So, Dr. Kang'ethe, always a good time to have you on the show to discuss animal welfare. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Prancha.
So, talk to us about this report about pig rearing and what that report entails, who participated in the report, when was it released, and just furnish us with the details of what it contains.
Thank you for having me here. That report that was released by the World Animal Protection was talking about how animal welfare affects pork quality. You know that from the point of production or along the value chain up to when the food lands on our table, anything happening along there should make our food safe. So this report that was released last week but by the World Animal Protection was looking at how animal welfare practices that farmers do and business people do affects the pork that runs on our plate. And so they found issues that were dealing with transport, issues that were dealing with how the animals were carried, how they were handled before slaughter, and the effect of that on the pork quality and consequently on how that would affect international business and the earnings of the farmer due to condemnation of the meat if it was found not fit for human consumption.
Amazing. And we as a country or as a people or even as farmers have quite a peculiar way of handling the pigs. So talk to us about how pigs should be transported to the slaughterhouse. Just before we talk about how to slaughter them and how to divide the meat and everything, talk to us about how they should be transported.
First, all animals have social order, and in that case, that means that if you are to transport pigs, you should transport them from one farm, just one farm, to the slaughterhouse. If you transport from this farm, then from this farm, you load them into a van, then that will mean that you are stressing those animals, and when you stress animals, they release a hormone called adrenaline, and that hormone affects the quality of the meat. Understand? Again, if you trek them for a very long distance to the slaughterhouse, that makes them to release lactic acid into their muscles, which also affects the quality of the meat. If you also transport them on motorbikes by tying their legs, you are bruising that meat. And you know that when you bruise the meat, there is a chance of infection from the bruised parts of the body, and therefore, those parts, when the meat inspector comes in, he'll have to condemn them because they are not fit for human consumption.
Amazing. Yes. These are very interesting findings, even to me as a colleague. But let's now talk about how they should be slaughtered, because I understand if you transport pigs for a long distance, they're going to get stressed. So let's talk about how to slaughter them. What is the appropriate way, Dr. Kang'ethe?
The appropriate way to slaughter them would be through stunning.
Okay.
Stunning basically is using electrodes. You place them behind the ears of the pigs just to make sure that you make the pig unconscious before you can cut the neck and, of course, drain the blood. But sometimes you find many people in the slaughterhouses not inputting the right voltage. That means that they have not made the pig unconscious, and therefore when they are slaughtering a conscious pig. That means that they are inflicting pain into that animal, and basically we should endeavor to do what we call human killing of those animals, just to make sure that they breed effectively, so that once all blood has been removed from the system, then that quality, you are sure that that quality of that meat is good enough for human consumption.
Great. So let's now start from pork. We have reared the pig, we have transported it properly, we have now slaughtered it. So what effect does improper animal welfare mechanisms have on trade or have on international trade? Because we understand Kenya is quite a big source of meat, meat and meat products here in this side of the Sahara. So how does that improper handling of animals or of pig in this, for the sake of this conversation, if affecting international trade?
The effect of not handling the animals properly would, the pigs properly, would mean that once the meat, the pork has been slaughtered, there will be so much condemnation. And if the farmer is receiving the payment through dressed weight, that would mean that the pig would weigh less because most of the parts have been condemned, meaning unsuitable for human consumption, and therefore the farmer gets less. Consequently, if we were to sell outside the country, then for failure to breed them correctly, and then if there are infections and things like that, that would mean that we fetch very low prices, or at other times we even fail to secure international markets, which is not very good for our business.
I hear you when you say that. So there's also the aspect of food safety, the effect of proper handling of these animals on food safety again. Talk to us about that with regard to the chemical processes that go about when formation of meat and formation of the final food on the table is concerned.
All right. You realize that with the growing middle class, people are now conscious, very conscious to say, about what they are eating. They are not just doing quantity, they are after doing quality. You just have food on your table that is quality food. You know that it's safe for you. You will not have any health complications after consuming that meal. And therefore, when animal welfare is not well taken care of, that the animals is bruised, that those operations are not looked at properly, what ends up on our plate is unsuitable food, which makes people fall sick when they consume them. And consequently, if people are sick, then that would mean that we are having an unhealthy population, and consequently we cannot be able even to contribute to the national economy. Therefore, we advise farmers that they should be able to do the right processes, the traders to do their part well, the meat inspectors as well, those working in the slaughterhouses, to make sure that whatever is coming out as the products of pork is wholesome and safe for human consumption.
So, and I'm going to ask this from a layman's perspective.
Yes.
The kind of practice that we are seeing on the screens right now, I wish my director could get that picture back on the screens. The kind of practice we are seeing, that is sort of zero grazing, really. Or if that also applies to pig farming, is that recommended? Is it an appropriate way of doing it? Or pigs should also be let free to, graze just like any other, the cows and the goat and the sheep?
I get where you're coming from, Branji. So on international arena, we are seeing that the world is migrating towards free range. You just did a story about chicken, where people are advised to do free range, because by encouraging free movement of animals, you are giving them freedom to be able to express their normal behavior. And once they express normal behavior, they are able to consume whatever is available, whether you are supplementing or they are just foraging on the greens outside. And the product that comes from there is number one, organic, meaning that if you consume it, it's healthy for you, and consequently, you don't have to suffer issues like what we call antimicrobial resistance, for example, which comes about when you put so many animals together, you're trying to cover up your messes, not observing cleanliness and hygiene. So you won't pump a lot of drugs into those animals to make them not fall sick, and consequently, those drugs end up into the food systems and finally into our body. So when you suffer a little cold, you go to the pharmacy, you're given medication, it cannot help you. Why? Because the products you have been consuming in small portions are the same products that are used to make human medicine, and therefore we fall into a situation where we say there is a superbug crisis, or a situation we also call antimicrobial resistance, where the drugs that are available cannot be able to treat the diseases that we may suffer.
Amazing. Talk to us about the demand for pork, and are we as a country meeting that demand, let alone locally, before we even think of exporting? Are we meeting that demand locally?
In the recent past, we've seen a big majority of people going into consuming pork, apart from small pockets where maybe religious practices may not allow people to consume pork. Majority of the people are consuming pork, either boiled, fried, or barbecued or otherwise. People are embracing pork, and as well as those finally processed products in the supermarkets. And as a country where we are, our farmers are doing very well because we are able to make sure that whatever the farmers produce is able to sustain the demand from the population. And therefore, I would say we are doing well as a country, but there is that option of international trade where if we exceed what we are producing currently, there's the option of doing international trade, which will give our farmers some more income as well.
Let's go back to that report by World Animal Health. What are some of the recommendations that were being given towards proper pig farming?
From the report by the World Animal Protection, they're recommending that animal welfare should be observed from the point of production at the farm up to when we are disposing the waste, and finally the food is getting onto our plates. But most importantly, during a pre-slaughter period that involves transportation, they should be transported in vans, animals of the same age, that they should be rested immediately they reach the slaughterhouse, just to make sure that the lactic acid, which could have accumulated in their muscles, breaks down. That standing should be done properly at the right voltage, just to make sure that the animal is fully unconscious before slaughter, to enable the animal drain the whole blood out of the system. And then from there, that motorbikes are not used, meaning that we avoid those bruises, so that each animal that comes to the slaughterhouse, that chances of condemnation becomes or are minimized to the lowest possible, just to give returns to the farmer, as it were.
Great. Perhaps just as we bring this conversation to a close, for anyone who is looking to get into pig farming, what should they expect to do? And how much is a kilo of pork retailing at currently, so that perhaps we also look at the return on investment aspect of it?
For someone desiring to join into the pig industry, a kilo of pork currently is retailing at, say, between 400 and 1,000, depending on where you're buying from.
Okay.
And that means that if you have your pigs that are at the right age for slaughter, giving you about 40 to between 30 to 40 kgs, then you can do, say, or a minimum of 40, then you can do your calculations by 500 and you get around 20,000 from each of them. And having raised an animal for 6 months from your farm, then that means if you have numbers, meaning if you slaughter many, that will mean that your cost of productions will come down, and therefore you'll be able to earn more from that enterprise.
Many thanks, my colleague. We have been speaking to my colleague Paul Kang'ethe, who is, I call him the vet who found his way into a newsroom and is now furnishing us with all these details about animal welfare. We've been talking about pork and the pig rearing, and of course the process from farm to plate. Kang'ethe, many thanks again. All right, let me now give you more stories that we had for you today. A 260-kilometer railway line linking Naivasha to Kampala in Uganda is set to be commissioned in November this year. According to Kenya Railways, rehabilitation works is